I love
And
those big questions.
and there's so many different ways that I suppose that I could answer this, and we can go. But again, a big part of this is definitely that self-awareness. And if we go back to the ECR, or the emotional capital report, and what sits right at the top of that is that self-knowing. So it's very much about kind of knowing ourselves, and knowing you know what makes us tick, and what lights us up, and what brings us joy, and also what doesn't, what drains us, as well. But I suppose one thing that I've been playing around with a lot is looking at situations in my life, and looking at my life through the different planes of consciousness. And once we can start to dig deeper into this, this is where all of those little breadcrumbs start to, leave clues behind. And again, we have to do this with curiosity, as well. But a lot of times, our true self is, or what I call our true nature, is there, but we've been, programmed with so many expectations, and so many shoulds, and
Mm.
so everyone else's way of doing things. So, the way I'd like to look at it from is those four planes of consciousness, and it's looking at it from a physical plane. Who am I as a physical being, and then the mental and emotional level, and delving into that. And then the third plane that I like to look at is our soul level, or our spiritual level. And this is my belief, but my belief is that we have come here with a certain true nature that we're destined to become, if we're able to step into that highest blueprint of who we are. So it's that ability to look at life through the lens of our soul, and life is always teaching us new things that we can learn. There's always learnings in everything. And then the other level that I like to look at it is through the energetics. Because everything is energy. So when I start to really work with people to really understand the essence of their true nature, and their blueprint, we always work through those four planes of existence, consciousness, whatever you want to call that. And that's, I suppose, where I like to start. But what sits over that is that sense of self-awareness, self-compassion, self-knowing, and then delving into it. So yeah, so there's many layers to that, but I think it's really taking the time to dig deeper.
When you approach your clients and introduce these four planes of consciousness, do you encounter resistance from them when you introduce it this way, or do they have a pre-knowledge of this?
No, you know what, Maria, actually it surprises me, because I used to always think, like I would work with a mindset coach, and it's like, okay, that was a certain part that I got. But then I always felt that there were pieces of the puzzle missing. And this went on for me when I first learned coaching. This was back in probably, I think it was 2011, 2012, when I
Mhm.
first did my coaching certification. And so for 10 years, I had kind of been searching for different pieces of the puzzle. And that's what it was like for me. It was like, okay, I've got this piece of the puzzle, but I still feel like there's something missing. And I wasn't able to put it all together. And it's only been in the last 18 months that I've been looking at it through this lens, and it made sense to me. So what I find when I introduce it to most of my clients, it's like a light bulb goes on, or it's like all of the pieces actually clicking together. And sometimes it's like I can hear this click, 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 because it actually makes sense. And yes, there's at times we get resistance from that soul level. But then when we start to look at it from a practical perspective, they're like, okay, that makes sense. And to give you an example of this, just say, for example, something happens and you're triggered. You know, you might have a reaction to, like, if I use it, for example, to one of my kids, you know, which is an everyday thing that happens. You know, something happened, and I have a response to that, like an emotional response.
Mhm.
Now, that's, you know, me, I have to take my 50% of that and I have to work through that and look at, well, what is that emotional response? Because I can, you know, react and get emotional, but that doesn't help it. Or I can take a step back. So, what I then do, and I can do this really quite quickly now, is that I process it through those lenses. So, I'll go, okay, what's the facts in this situation? So, what actually happened? Taking all the emotion out of it and just look at the fact. So, it could have been, you know, one of the kids said something to me and I kind of lost my temper, to say. So, the fact is, I XYZ.
Mhm.
Then the next level is that level of the mental and the emotional. So then I look at, okay, what do I make that mean? Because as we know, we make stories out of situations, or we make them mean a certain thing based on our beliefs, our
Mhm.
limiting beliefs, and our conditioning. So then I will look at that and look at it from a mental and an emotional perspective. What feelings arose for me? Was it anger? Was it frustration? And look at it through that lens and journal, and then I do some practices around that. Then at the soul level is, what is the gift in this for me? What am I learning, or what do I need to learn? So there's always a gift when we look at that. And then that fourth level from the energetics is, what do I want instead? And I start to put energy into how I would have liked to have responded instead. So that's from a really practical. So when I start working with clients and we start looking at things through those lenses, they're like, ah, okay, because it just makes so much sense. And it's practical as well, that they can then take it away and start working with it straight away.
Yes, and it's a constant practice.
Absolutely, it is.
Constant practice, because we
Yeah,
get triggered with so many, in so many levels and in so many ways, and sitting with that and observing a reaction and learning from the energetic phase
correct.
and others, or your emotional, or your even layers of beliefs and values, and even, you know, our ego.
Absolutely. Yes. So it kind
So
of takes all that away and just gives us a really simple way to look at situations in our life.
indeed, yes, I like that, because we use it in my program. For example, I have the first step where we observed and work through our limiting beliefs. So we go through a similar uncovering
Yeah.
and questioning of that curiosity. What would it serve me, and how does this serve
Mhm.
me, and who would I be without this thought?
Yeah.
But I think I could take it even further with your example of this alignment, and, you know, at a soul level, what do I need to learn?
Correct.
And that will create even more impact, I think, in
Yeah.
our awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, from there, that's when we might look at different tools, you know, depending on what limiting beliefs or what conditioning comes up.